In Darke County, Ohio, there was a girl named Phoebe Ann Moses who was born on August 13th, 1860. She was the sixth daughter of her Quaker parents, Jacob and Susan Moses. Sadly, they were poor farmers and lived a precarious life. Along with her only brother and another sister, Annie Oakley, as she was later known, had to face the harsh realities of life from a very young age. One winter day in 1866, when Annie was only 5 years old, her father, Jacob, got caught in a blinding snowstorm while he was returning home with much-needed supplies. Unfortunately, he didn't make it home alive. The following year, in August 1867, Annie's mother married Daniel Brumbaugh, who became Annie's stepfather. However, their happiness was short-lived as Daniel passed away after a fall just 2 years later. Overwhelmed and overtaxed, Annie's mother sent her to a state orphanage run by a family friend in a nearby town. The family promised to send Annie to school in exchange for farm work. However, they broke their promise and Annie ended up doing all the household chores without any education. They even beat her mercilessly, and Annie's life became a living hell. But Annie was a fighter, and in 1872, at the age of 12, she ran away from her family and returned to the orphanage. She started to help out by hunting for food in the woods and reconnecting with her mother and siblings. Sadly, her stepfather had already passed away, and her mother had a new baby to take care of. After 2 years, in 1874, Susan, Annie's mother, married an old friend and mailman named Joseph Shaw. She quickly became a skilled hunter and an excellent shot, bringing home small game and birds to feed her family. Despite being right-handed, she soon became equally skilled with her left hand. Annie had a unique technique for shooting ducks in the head, so no pieces of shot were embedded in the meat when it was cooked. Annie was not only focused on hunting, but also made efforts to improve her education. She practiced reading, writing, and even the more delicate female arts such as fancy needlework. Annie's methodical ways paid off as the money she earned from her hunting helped her mother pay off the mortgage on their family farm, which they had started just 13 months ago. Her mother's new husband, Joseph, was going blind, and Annie's contribution was a lifesaver for the family. As a teenager, Annie had a chance to enter a Cincinnati shooting contest against Frank Butler, a well-known marksman. To everyone's surprise, Annie defeated him. Butler, who was about 10 years older than her, took the loss graciously and started to court Annie. Annie Oakley married Frank Butler, a famous marksman, a year after she defeated him in a shooting contest. However, there is some confusion about the year they were married, as publicity agents later changed her age and a timeline of her early life. Even though Butler was divorced and had 2 daughters, Oakley adopted them, and they did not have any children of their own. Butler was not only a great shooter, but also a sensible businessman. Under his tutelage, Phoebe Moses, now known as Annie Oakley, became a celebrity in traveling variety shows and circuses. She made her costumes, which included ankle-length dresses with buckskin fringes and cowboy hats. She performed shooting acts in the arena, bringing down fast-moving targets while skipping around and kicking up her heels as she left the ring. Oakley epitomized the women of the West in appearance and manner, although she had never been farther west than Kansas. Her breakthrough came when she was accepted into the Buffalo Bill Wild West Exposition, which was run by William Buffalo Bill Cody. Although she had been rejected on her first application, she impressed Cody's partner Nate Salisbury with her shooting skills and was immediately hired. As part of the show, Oakley perfected her act, shooting clay pigeons in rapid succession and bringing down clusters of glass balls thrown through the air. She also rode a galloping horse side saddle while untying a ribbon from one of its legs, showcasing her skills as a sharpshooter and a rider. To maintain her reputation as a quintessential Victorian lady, Oakley was careful to distance herself from the fast-living and slatternly behavior that was often associated with women in show business. Between acts, she could be found positioned at the doorway of her tent with her embroidery in hand, indicating that she was living up to the delicate domestic ideal. Despite her offstage manner of unviolated femininity, Oakley was the epitome of Western daring. She mastered the art of shooting clay pigeons in rapid succession, shooting down clusters of glass balls thrown through the air, and riding a galloping horse side saddle while untying a ribbon from one of its legs. Her talent and skill earned her a spot in the Buffalo Bill Wild West Exposition, which became an enormously popular hit during her first season, the summer and fall of 1885. The show ran throughout the next summer at Staten Island, New York, and attracted 360,000 visitors. Cody, the showman, was one of the first to romanticize the western frontier just as it was closing, creating the larger-than-life storybook image of cowboys, Indians, settlers, prospectors, and soldiers that has become a staple of American popular culture. Oakley became an icon of this image, enchanting audiences with her feminine delicacy and a western flair. Annie Oakley and Buffalo Bill's relationship began to deteriorate while their show was in England. The cause of the rift was not disclosed, but it was related to Buffalo Bill's decision to hire another woman sharpshooter named Lillian Frances Smith. Though Smith was talented, she was ill-mannered and boastful, unlike Oakley. Despite this, British audiences admired both women, but Oakley received greater accolades as she better fit their ideal of a good woman. At the end of the British season, Oakley and her husband left the Wild West show and toured Europe independently for the rest of the summer. Upon their return to America, they worked for another Wild West show next summer. The reasons for Oakley's departure from Buffalo Bill's show remain a mystery, but her independent spirit and refusal to compromise her values may have played a part. Annie Oakley was not only a sharpshooter, but also a trendsetter. In the 1890s, bicycles were the new craze, and Oakley was quick to adopt this new mode of transportation. She bought a bicycle in England and claims to be the first lady cyclist in London. When she brought it back to America, she learned how to ride without using her hands and even shout down moving targets while cycling. Oakley was a trailblazer in fashion as well. She designed a practical cycling outfit for women that did not involve bloomers, which she regarded as unfashionable. Despite conforming to feminine ideals, Oakley was not afraid to offer her services to the military. She offered to raise a regiment of armed fighting women when America went to war with Spain in 1898. Frank Butler, Oakley's husband, was a great manager who ensured that Oakley received favorable press everywhere. He also arranged lucrative publicity deals with gun and ammunition makers whose equipment she used. During her years with the Wild West show, Oakley entered shooting contests and usually proved to be the equal or superior of the men she encountered, including a succession of American champions. Annie Oakley and her husband, Frank Butler, were in their 40s by 1900 and had grown tired of their life on the road with the Wild West show. They owned a house in Nutley, New Jersey, which they had built themselves and spent as many months there as they could during breaks from the show. Unfortunately, in 1901, their train collided with a freight train in North Carolina, injuring Oakley's back. She underwent several spine operations over the next few months. Oakley used the accident as a reason for leaving the show and explained to her fans that the shock had turned her hair white overnight, forcing her to wear a wig. However, settling down in New Jersey proved difficult for Oakley, and she often clashed with her servants. Eventually, in 1904, she sold the house and resumed her wandering lifestyle, living in hotels, boarding houses, and tents. Annie Oakley sued more than 30 newspapers throughout the United States in 1904. These newspapers carried a story that claimed she was a cocaine addict who had been stealing to fund her addiction and that she was now in prison. However, the story was entirely untrue, and the press had not checked its facts. The real Annie Oakley was eager to defend her reputation, and she won several cases. As a result, most of the other newspapers settled out of court. She was especially pleased to win $27,500 in damages from the Chicago news baron William Randolph Hearst, who had added insult to injury by sending a private detective to Greenville, Ohio, to dig up scandals against her. Over the next few years, much of Annie Oakley and Frank Butler's income came from Frank's work as a salesman for an ammunition company in Connecticut and from Annie's winnings in competitive shooting matches. However, Annie also played heroines in several stage melodramas. Annie Oakley enjoyed a brief return to the arena between 1911 and 1913 with the Vernon Seavers Young Buffalo show. She even gave free tickets to children from the orphanage where she grew up, which was a touching gesture. During this show, she developed a new trick of firing behind her back, using a mirror to aim, and she was still able to hit the targets with unerring accuracy. Additionally, she performed another stunt where she split playing cards held lengthwise with a single shot. As the new century progressed, she moved frequently between Florida, Ohio, Maryland, and New Jersey, still shooting competitively, hunting, and teaching other women how to shoot. By 1922, now 62, she was contemplating another comeback and even considering movie offers. Unfortunately, she was involved in a serious car accident near Daytona, Florida, which landed her in the hospital for more than a month. From then on, she was forced to wear a leg brace and could only walk with difficulty. However, her health declined in her later years. On November 3, 1926, Annie Oakley passed away in Greenville, Ohio, near her family and her friends. She had been trying to write an autobiography, which was left unfinished. Frank Butler, her devoted husband, died less than 3 weeks later. Goodbye, and rest in peace, Annie Oakley.